Today, as you can see, the topic will be on reducing the usage of air conditioning in subtropical regions and latest technologies from Germany. So I'm sure we'll be discussing some case studies as well, the state of the art. So it's my pleasure and honor to welcome Dr. Ferdinand Oswald from the University of Auckland in New Zealand. So for all our participants joining on site and from the Zoom platform, this lecture series, a special lecture series, is being organized by the Faculty of Planning and Architecture, the University of Auckland in New Zealand, in collaboration with Silpakorn University, our Faculty of Architecture in Thailand. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Ferdinand again, and I'd like to hand over the stage. I'll be right next to you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Welcome to Silpakorn.
Thank you very much for your introduction. Very, very kind. And yes, I'm here now. So, and before I start, I'd like to thank as well a few persons. So especially I'd like to thank techn, who's here as well. I think your nickname is Goth, I heard. Is that correct? So for organization of the speech and giving me the possibility to be here. As well, I'd like to thank Timo Siri, Anna, for organizing especially this lecture. And I'd like to thank the Dean, Non. So I apologize when I don't know your whole names. The timings are a bit difficult for me. The head of school, Adison, Supicha, and Dane Vasikiri. No, Vasikiri. So it's really great to be here. I'm really happy. It's a big pleasure and a big honor for me. I have a very close relationship to Thailand. So actually, my wife is Thai. I've been here many, many times. I've been here at Silpakorn as well before. And what I can see in Thailand right now is that there's kind of increasing quality in architecture. So there's coming a new generation of young architects, graduates, doing their own offices. And you can see popping up more and more young offices in Bangkok, especially, and you see fantastic projects. So actually, if I name just a few, which I know personally, is Creative Crew, which is run by Pulfai Kunawat and Bank Ekacham. Or, for example, there's Shma Landscape Architecture by Namchai. Or Jung Architects, which I met yesterday, I guess, who done actually this library as well, but he done as well the big library for the Silpakorn University, and he done the new lecture theater here at Silpakorn Palace Campus. So it's really impressive, and I'm really enjoying my time here. And I'd like to thank as well all other staff supporting me and all those students, which are really open-minded. It's really nice. They're not I've had contact with students which haven't been so shy, so it was really a good impression for me as well. I'm really it's amazing to see a very high standard of design works here at Silpakorn School of Architecture, made by the students, supervised by really, really good staff who's working really, really hard. And yeah, my compliment and congratulations to that. Let's start about me. So I'm born in Stuttgart, Germany. My father is an architect as well. He was professor at the University of Stuttgart. He became then urban planner at the city of Heidelberg. And my dad told me, you can do whatever you want, but not architecture. Said, well, why is that? What happened was that we all became architects. So me and my brother, we became architects. And I was thinking about what my father said before, and actually probably it's the thing, when you are architects, you need to be a full architect. You need to spend a lot of passion and a lot of energy, which is good. Actually, I think that's a good issue. I had a talk before with another colleague here from the university. She said, we really interested in music, and actually some other families are musician, and I'm a musician. And there was the time where I had to decide between to become a musician or an architect. And actually, I'm quite happy to be an architect, not a musician who sits every day on the stage and need to play an instrument. So architecture is much more diverse. So you can go in many, many different directions, and you can decide that by yourself, right? So as an architect, you can decide where you like to focus and where you like to go. I'm really interested about your opinion as well. So I have here a book, and I'm happy to write down some feedback and questions from your side if you want. Maybe we can do that after the speech, which I will do now. Maybe best would be to have a small discussion, even that would be wonderful. And the first slide is a little bit more about me. So actually, that's my current staff card on the right side. And I studied in Switzerland and Spain, mainly in Germany, and I worked mainly in German universities and Austrian universities, but I was as well visiting professor in Qingdao in China. I worked in Hong Kong, I worked in Shanghai, and actually, as well as you can see here on the left side in Egypt, in Cairo. And this is really funny because they had problems to pronounce my name or to write my name. So on the right side in blue, you see my correct name, Ferdinand Oswald, but they wrote Ferdinand. Oswald. Really funny. And they corrected it afterwards. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, Ferdinand. So it sounds like French. And so I offered the students in Cairo to call me Dr. France. And they kept it till today. So when I go back there, they say, hey, Dr. Friend. That's quite nice. In Auckland, it's very personal, the relationship from teachers and staff to students. So, and it's a very similar level. So everybody is on the same level, doesn't matter which position you have. So that's why they don't put the title on the card. And they call me mostly just Ferdinand, so it's quite nice. So if you're interested to go to Auckland, I can suggest to do so. But let's start with the topic now. And in my opinion, to be an architect is a very, very high responsibility, right? So we are creating space for human beings. And that is a lot of mass, what we are creating. And therefore, the very, very high responsibility is regarding the climate change as well, right? And the climate change is here. And that's really, really not funny. That's a very serious issue. And actually, you can see that right now in moderate climate zones like Europe, the States, China, they have big, big issues right now. I don't know, maybe you read it in the press. If not, please do so. So we have right now the problem that we have an increasing temperature. It's much more higher than normally. We have the lakes, we have not enough water, so the lakes dry out, fishes are dying, ships cannot drive, the plants are dying because they're too dry. We have big fires, forest fires. So actually what you see on the right side here is happening right now. And we can see that and we cannot deny it. Now the question is, so what this picture is saying, oh, we have some areas where it's getting hotter. And then on the left side, we can see we have areas where the water will increase, right? And on the way here to Silpakorn, every day across here the river, I saw that they're building a dam. That's probably normal. So we have that in Bangkok since many, many centuries. So if there's a monsoon rain, so if it's very little more, the water is increasing, that's normal in Bangkok. But if we compare what's happening right now, for example, in Europe, and if we would adapt that to Bangkok, it will be that the water will increase 2 meters. And not only for 2 or 3 days, for a longer time, for several months. And then there's really a problem here, because 2 meters is too much. So then we cannot have anything in Bangkok, right? Infrastructure, cars, etc. So the question is here, when will this happen? And actually seeing what's happening in Europe right now, I'm really worried that this will become very soon here as well. And the most important question for us is, what can we do as architects to solve the problem? So you see here the title again, and I'm asking myself always, what is sustainable architecture? What is sustainability? And what I tried today here with this speech is to collate that, right, into 4 topics. So A, B, C, D. So you can see the reduce of something, recycle, reuse, and the repurpose. And to each of these topics, A, B, C, D, I have put some projects, and I would like to introduce you to different solutions, and as well show up some specific problems here. And I will start in A with project in Bangkok. The first is the Met, built 10 years ago, and a quite new project, the wind shell from Kevin Marklow. And I start with my mentor, which is Werner Sobeck. So he is actually a very famous man in Germany. So he's the founder of the DGMB, the German Sustainable Building Council, which he founded 15 years ago. He's the owner of a huge office. So he built, for example, he done the engineering for the international airport in Bangkok. And he's head of ILIC, which is one of the most innovative schools of architecture in Germany, because it's not only architecture, it's engineering and architecture. And he brought that together into one institution. He was the supervisor of my dissertation, and my dissertation title is Reduce AC, reducing the utilization of air conditioning in high-rise buildings in subtropical and tropical climate regions. And I think, or I thought 10 years ago, that's a really important issue, as you can see here quickly. So you see actually here the increasing demand for air conditionings worldwide. You can see 2019, and then it will increase if we continue like that. On the right side, you see different energy percentages for heating, lighting, for example. And you can see space cooling is 37%. So that's the major part, which means there's high urgency to act, to try to reduce the energy loss for AC cooling. I came, I think, 12 or 13 years first time to Hong Kong, and I saw these houses all with air conditioning, split air conditioning. I thought, hey, somehow that's a problem, because you need a lot of energy to run them. So I created like a map. So this is actually mainly about South America and China, and you see there's a really, really high energy demand for air conditioning. And then where comes the energy from? Mainly from coal plants. So coal consumption is a big problem, which causes actually air pollution. And then we have another problem, the urban heat island effect. That's all not new for you, I guess. What I saw actually was that it's kind of devil's circle, right? So if more people have ACs, it's getting hotter outside because one AC unit is actually releasing 40% heat of all the electricity. So it's really ineffective, an AC, and it's just heating up the air, which is in general very, very ineffective. Nevertheless, I try to find different projects in Southeast Asia, which I really intensively studied then during my doctoral thesis. And you can see I started here with traditional architecture in Longyang, Fujian in China with the traditional Toulouse, like these earthen round-shaped buildings. This was adopted by an architect named Liu Xingfeng, who actually created the urban Toulouse out of these traditional Toulouse. Really, really interesting. In Hong Kong, I studied the high rises in Ubon Ratchathani, in Singapore, and as well the Met, which I'd like to show you now here. And the question here, how I done this? Actually, I done like a parallel method. So I simulated with different programs like Weather Manager, weather tools, and simulated thermal comfort and loading the weather data into that. So the weather data is here, wind temperature, humidity, orientation, and then that's the psychrometric chart. That's really helpful and important. It's actually looks maybe complicated, but it's quite easy. So here you have the temperature, you have different data, humidity, and the yellow part is the comfort zone. So, and then you have for each day in the year, you have 1 point. You see in Singapore, all these points are here. So that's the whole year. In Singapore, it's really difficult to be comfort, right? Because Singapore is hot during the day, during the night, the whole year, and very humid. That's why all these points are here on the top, so they are not in the yellow zone. And now we can increase the comfort by different measurements. So we can say we use natural ventilation. So that's pink here, the pink color, and it's that one here. And you can see, aha, if we use natural ventilation, then we can increase the thermal comfort for many, many days during the year in Singapore. Okay. What I done as well, like I done measurements on site. So I detected the air temperature, surface temperature, thermal mass, things, wind speed. And you can actually see here an example from Ubon Ratchathani. And what you can see is that the climate in Ubon Ratchathani is different than in Bangkok. So because we are here close to the sea, Ubon Ratchathani is continental climate, which means there's more earth mass, and the earth mass is surging coolness. So that's why in the nighttime it's cooling down more than in Bangkok. And then if you have actually here you see a building in the floor plan, and you can see that's timber frame here, and this is concrete. And what I found out is that the concrete takes during the night the coolness and it keeps it. And then during the day it releases the coolness. So a solid material can help us to cool down interior spaces without air conditioning. I done as well like a study about the different architecture typology. So you can see actually here an example from Hong Kong, so the typical housing authority residential high-rise, where you can see the facade is very much folded. So I studied like in which climate it's good to fold the facade to create shadow, that the air can flow better through, and in which climate it's better to have like a more compact building typology. And here's really important are the different possible passive cooling methods, which are 4: natural ventilation, reducing of solar heat gains, thermal mass cooling, and evaporation. And I analyzed this on 4 levels. Macro level is the urban structure, meso level, the building typology and floor plan structure, Then we have the micro level, which is the facade and opening structure, and meta level is traditional architecture concept. So let's have a view quickly to the mat. The mat is built by Woha architects Wong Mong Sum and Richard Hassel from Singapore. Pui Phai was the office leader in Bangkok, or project leader of this project. And you can see actually in the sketches already, the idea is to make it really porous that the air can flow through to reduce the usage of air conditioning. Interestingly, each unit has an air conditioning, so that's like a standard thing. So it's actually a luxury residential building for very rich people. But I talked to them and I studied the energy consumption, and actually most people are not using air conditioning. So they just open up the windows and not using air conditioning. There's one inhabitant who's using a lot, but out of many, many others, that person was the only one using a lot of air conditioning. Greenery plays a role as well, as you can see in the images. And actually here you can see how the wind goes through. So actually we have rebuilding paths in the middle there, huge gaps where the wind can go through. You can see that here in the photo as well. Orientation is very important. So the sun goes from here on this other side here. So solar radiation is mainly coming from these two sides, and that's why here's just closed. There are no windows, so the sun cannot heat up the interior through the window. And that means actually we have like these interesting concrete column structure in the facade, and that creates shadows, as you can see here in this image on the top. So we can actually avoid any shadow system. We can just open up the windows in total, as you can see here on the photo, because automatically it creates shadow here, and that's really, really made, well made. What is not working very well is the storage. So actually, the sun is coming here and then heating up these beams, and that's actually a disadvantage. But nevertheless, I was studying the project, so I lived there 2 weeks and made my measurements, and I opened up the windows and doors, and suddenly when I was on my table, all my papers flew away. So the wind was even a little bit too strong. And here it's important to focus on the type of the opening. So there are many different possibilities. And what you can see here on the back here are just doors for the terrace. And that's a disadvantage because you can open or you can close it. So whether A or B. And if it's open, there's coming too much wind. On the other side here, on that side, there are sliding doors. And the sliding doors you can control very precisely. You can say, oh, I open the window only a little bit, a small gap, and then the wind goes in and out only a little bit. So that's really good to have a sliding window, and it's not good to have just a door to control the airflow of natural ventilation. So that's the result in the trigonometric chart, and we can see here, oh, quite a lot of days in the year are outside the comfort zone, but we can see that we can increase a lot of days with natural ventilation. Actually, this area here. So that's really good possible, and as well we can use evaporation cooling. Actually, that's the turquoise and this one, the purple one. We can see here a few days we can where we can improve the comfort by evaporation, and you can see here some studies how it can work. Of course, not everybody can have money to have these pools. I found in the ground floor actually the proof that it's really working and cooling. So actually Here's the Saturn road, and I measured here 36.5 degrees. Airspeed was not very fast. And then if I moved here under the house where there are many water surfaces and in the lobby of the mat, and the temperature decreased to 32 degrees. And that's because of evaporation, and the wind speed increased. And that's because here the wind comes here, and then it likes to go here under it to these openings. So there's the possibility that the wind goes through, but it becomes more fast when you have smaller openings. So it's really depending to the climate region to use a specific method or to combine specific cooling methods, whether it's evaporation, thermal storage, or natural ventilation. In general, you could say in Bangkok, it's really good to have like a building volume which looks like this, where the sun is actually on these two sides, and you can avoid solar radiation heats up your building too much. But we done a project with the Hong Kong Housing Authority. So we developed different window types. The acoustic balcony, third generation, we developed and built it. We done some testing, and we actually changed the structure of existing buildings. So to increase the possibility of cross ventilation. Because there's the problem of noise pollution, we created that acoustic balcony, and air pollution, or maybe COVID can be a topic here as well. So we done projects with filters, which is quite a challenge because you need to have a higher pressure of winds to still create natural ventilation. But let's come to the next project, the wind shell. And this is actually a very new project from 2021. And as you can read here, in my opinion, it's the reduction of air conditioning at its best. The residential high-rise project is from Kevin Mark Lowe. He's an of a small project in Kuala Lumpur, and is providing sufficient natural ventilation in each single apartment space. So each space has that ventilation. Very special here is that it's like a loft type apartment, so very high ceilings, very special. And you have a very good quality of concrete, like in Switzerland. I will show you that in a second. And he created an architecture which provides, at the same time, like a shadow advice against solar radiation or against the sun. It's not a luxury building, it's even higher. It's a high-end luxury building. As you can see here, the rooftop is the infinity pool, and it's actually a pity. I mean, it would be great to design such an idea for like the middle class or even for poorer people, right? And that would be really, really interesting, and yeah, it would be a nice project actually to do so. But you can see here on the photos already that the building is it's very organized and rectangular. It's really porous. You can look through, right? So and if we zoom in, you can see there are very, very high window openings. So they're going over 2 stories, 5-meter high windows. From inside, it looks really like a loft, like that. It's really difficult actually to have this window. So they're from Schüco, a German company. You can easily open and close them. It's really And the reason for that is actually the plants. So the plants need 1 meter of earth. Can be a pool as well. So it's depending to the type of the apartment. And that's why actually it goes down here. And this is quite nice because it's protecting from the sun. You can see here, that's the part here. It's protecting. Here's another floor. And this variation, there's a staircase going around here. There are different styles. I just discussed with a colleague from this university about lighting. So probably in East Asia, it's nice, can be nice to have more darker spaces. In Europe, it's really important to have it very light because dark is more like cool. And in Germany, for example, we like to have it very lighty because we like to have it warm. Nevertheless, the spaces are very lighty because they have two orientations. So light coming from two sides. So you can see here on the photo, if you look to the big loft space, still enough light. And then there's like a service area in between where light's coming in, but mainly that as well for the natural ventilation that we can do cross ventilation. Okay. No, fantastic project. So it's actually reducing the usage of air conditioning, which is actually the operational efficiency, right? Or carbon, operational carbon. And that's important for us. But there's another topic, a second one, which is the whole of life embodied carbon emission. And this is really important for us to focus now as well. And if we, so that's from the New Zealand government. So green is operational carbon. So that's actually a house which is standing from 0 till 60 years. And you see green is like for heating or cooling the energy. And then the blue one is the embodied carbon to produce here the house, maintain, and then end of life. And here, this is like if you recycle and you use all the building components, but we are not doing. So that's why this package you need to put here on top of that, in my point of view. And somehow my opinion about it is there's really not so much data yet about the whole life cycle. In my opinion, it's the relationship between operational and embodied carbon is different as people assume now. So here you see again, green is operation, blue is embodied, and here we are assuming that we will reduce the operational usage. And then the blue one becomes more important. That's why. But I think it's actually probably like this. So that's all blue here. So it's much more than we assume. Anyway, I like to come now to this topic, looking to the whole life cycle, the embodied carbon as well. And I'd like to start with a project where I planned the first passive house in a huge scale in Frankfurt, Germany, with Stefan Forster. It was a very interesting task, and we won the German Sustainability Award, but it is not a sustainable building. And I would like to explain you why. So first, we coming back to the operational energy. So in moderate climates, we have the problem it's cold. That's why we need to heat. Totally different to Thailand, for example. And then we need a lot of energy, and that's causing climate change. What we're doing is that we put a lot of insulation now on our houses, that we don't need to heat so much, that we can keep actually the heat inside the building. And the problem is here, if you look to the world energy consumption, 50 Empty. Oh, you have magic fingers. Thank you. So what you see here, the data is actually how much energy you use to heat a building in cold climates. And it's
Cup. So, can you hear me again, loud and clear? Wonderful. So, again, normally 220 kilowatt per year in square meter, and passive house only 15. So you can save a lot of energy. It's nearly zero what we need for a passive house. Okay, that's why 2005. So more than 10 years ago, it was really people thought, wow, that's really a nice invention to have a passive house. And that's why I built it. And I quickly like to explain you how it works. So because we have so much insulation here, we don't need any more much heating. And that's working like, for example, with geothermal activity. We take the air into the earth. You can do that with water as well. And if you go 6 meters in the ground, you have always the average temperature of the whole year. And that's in moderate climate zones, that can be really, really nice. So it can be in between very hot and cold. So in summer, for example, we can cool down the air. On winter, we can heat it up. So we save a lot of energy already. The problem which we have in Europe is that we use a system which is called exterior insulation finishing system. And that's working with EPX, which is extruded polystyrene. That's a kind of plastic type. And we glue that here on the load bearing wall, and we the mesh here, glue and plaster and color. So many different layers. And the problem is, after lifetime, when we demolish that, we cannot recycle it because we cannot separate the different layers. We can only recycle when we have the pure material, when we have one pure material. If we have a combination, a composite, we cannot recycle it. Therefore, we must separate everything. But that's not possible if we glue everything together. And that's why I said that's not sustainable. And this is the development in Germany, where you can actually see that's the sale 2014. That is the Cheops pyramid in Egypt. They are huge. They're really huge. And this is what is sold already since 1960. And that's what we will build and sell in the future. And then we have a very small portion here, which is only what is already dismantled and on disposal. That means in the future, we need somehow think about how we can, what we can make with all that material from demolition. Oh, now I'm getting another fancy microphone back. That's cool, or it's not working. Just check if I can turn it on. It's on. Probably must be just turned on a little bit. I don't care, just continue. So this project I built with Stefan Forster for the passive house. And the problem here is, if we like to adapt that into a passive house, because of the additional insulation, we are getting too thick walls here, right? And therefore, we use EPS and render, exterior insulation finishing system, which is not sustainable. And that's why I thought it's not sustainable. Even we got the Germany Sustainability Award. If you compare the building branch with the car industry, for example, the car industry, 95% of the car components can be separated. And then we can recycle them and reuse them. In the building branch, it's only 20%. Right? So we have a problem here, and we need to face this problem. I was really lucky. I had the opportunity to meet actually the CEO of the market leader, world market leader of that system, which is Stowe here, the yellow logo here on the left side. And he gave us the task to develop something new. And we looked to the nature. What you see here is barnacle plants. And the problem was we can separate the different layers. So we adapt actually the system into something which you can open and close, right? So you know actually fastener fixation, or on the state it's called Velcro, from many different things. You can find it actually everywhere, but not in the housing industry. And we done 2012 the grants for that. We done a lot of testings to certificate that product, to bring that to the market. We won quite a few prizes, the European Recycling Award, another Innovation Award, and then we released the product on the market in German-speaking countries. And now we have a product where we can separate, recycle, and reuse all the components, which is quite important for us in the future, because we can avoid having special waste or a lot of disposal. There are other possibilities, for example, the active house. This is actually, again, from Werner Sobeck. As I mentioned, he done the engineering for the international airport in Bangkok. And the active house is actually a building which produces energy, right? So actually in the facade, photovoltaic panels, and then you can even feed your car. You have more energy than you need actually for yourself. So you can sell the surplus energy, or you can feed your car. And very important is Werner Sobeck designed here in 2011 the 000 concept, which means zero energy for the building, zero emission building, and zero waste building. Very similar to what you saw before. Nothing is glued together. You can separate each component using ecological materials, was the aim here in a very early stage as well in 2011. Much more new is another strategy from TU Munich, Germany. So this is Professor Florian Nagler, and he's actually following the Simply House strategy, which is avoiding technique as much as possible. And what he done here, he built a demonstrator building in 2021 out of 3 materials. One is timber, one is brick, and one is concrete. And all these materials are very porous. You can see there are air cavities in the timber, there are air cavities in the brick, and this is porous concrete. And actually, that means that material has insulation properties. You don't need additional insulation here. And that makes the whole thing very, very simple. Potential of recycling. Conventional building is what I showed you before with the exterior insulation and finishing system is between 10 and 20%. If we have that monolithic case study building, we can recycle up to between 90 and 95%, which is really, really good. how is this working? Actually, with architecture. So it's up to us designing the houses in the right issue. So they have specific ceiling heights that we can use, thermal storage as best as possible. The openings are very interesting. They are very deep, as you can see here, as well here on the photo. And then the sun is not shining directly on the glass, so it's creating shadow. In summer, we can use, we can heat up our building with solar radiation, and we have this specific window opening where we can control cross or single-sided ventilation in a very good manner. So comparing like a conventional building, this one, where you have a lot of layers, which you need to separate after lifetime, with that simple building where you have only one layer. It's much easier to recycle at end of lifetime, and actually the things cannot break. So you have here a shadow advice. It can break, right? But if you don't have nothing which can break, nothing can break, right? It's autark, the building, regarding lighting, illumination, electricity, and electronic devices that comes from the grid. But the heating and cooling is only coming from that earth, geothermal earth. That's really amazing. Here you see all the three buildings again. Actually, there's no reinforcement in the concrete, and as well not in the brick structure. That's why you have these arc-shaped openings, like in the past. For example, in the Romans, you have like these arcs. We'd only need lintels if we don't like to have an arc. So what we are doing everywhere is like a linear economy. So that means we're producing something, we use it, and then we dispose it. So that's from here, from 1 to 2. And that's really bad, because here we have disposal, we have waste. What we like to do is the circular economy, right? We like to produce it, we like to use it, and then we like to reuse it. And we can repeat that again and again and again. And then it becomes really, really sustainable. Okay? And that's why I like to show you the Nest project. Again, a project where Werner Sobeck was cooperating with the Kebel and Felix Heisel. And this is actually a project which is very close to Zurich in Switzerland, and it's an experimental unit with many different dominant Swiss companies and institutions. And actually, the aim here was to find out how we can reuse material which was already used on another building, right? And the structure here is by Ramazio Kohler architects, as you can see, and then it was filled step by step by different research units. Yes, we can fill it. And I will name here only some examples. So the strategy actually was to reuse and recycle the different materials, to use dry joining. So we don't use glue or wet connections. We like to recycle the materials. Actually, here it's planned to dismantle the whole project next year. So next year, the whole building will be not demolished, but it will be reassembled or dismantled. Thank you. Yeah, and actually circular economy, reuse, recycling, avoidance, and using probably new materials. And what you can see here is one wall. So that's hemp insulation. There's another material out of, it's another project where they produced insulation by growing a fungus, right? It's very sustainable. It's a nature material. It's a modular structure, the whole thing. As you can see here in this image, for example, the copper facade is from a previous hotel roof, which have been reused here. And we have glass ceramic plates, which have been recycled. All connections are reversible, modular construction, and we like to ease of dismantling here. So I think a really, really important project. The question maybe here is, how could we use that, right? So if we are planning a new project, how can we get the old material from old buildings? So do we have to drive to the city of Bangkok and looking for sites where they're demolishing houses? That's not possible, isn't it? So we need to find another strategy, and probably we need to store as much as possible components. And then if we need something, we can go there and then we can use it for a new building. And that's exactly what some people in Switzerland done. So this is actually Barbara Buser and Eric Honegger, and they created the Bauteillager. It's a German word, which we could translate into a component inventory storage. So they are collecting different material from old demolished houses, store them, and then architects can come and can use them. So here are stored bricks, parquet, tiles, wooden doors, windows, ceramic hobs, many different things. And these two guys have an architecture office, Baubüro in situ, and they are making new projects out of recycled material, as you can see here. This is actually a refurbishment project of an old bakery in Switzerland, in Basel as well. And that's a highly interesting building. So that transformed the architecture. So they created a big courtyard in the middle. And you can see actually that all these windows are already used. So that's why they have like these different sizes and different colors. That's from inside again. Then actually the reuse of old material in different functions. So this is actually like the black material was probably a facade element, but now it's a barrier for the staircase. So it's quite interesting what is possible to do. Another project from that office is K118 in Winterthur, as well in Switzerland. And here it's actually 80% recycled material is used here as well, including the supporting structure, staircases, and facade. It's quite impressive. And I think it's a really good way to go in that direction. And these people fighting for that idea since many, many years and becoming now very successful, because actually the people are not coming to them, the architects and landlords and real estates, because people saying, hey, we are worried about our climate. They are coming now a lot because of Corona. We have a lack of material, right? So there's a steel construction stocked stacked in China, not coming here, or in the Suez Canal, it's blocked, or whatever. Ukraine war, is a problem with oil. So they're coming now because it's easier. They can reach the material faster than normally. And that's quite interesting. So that's written here again, what I just told you. It's a nice idea and innovative project. And so is that as well, can we find that in Thailand as well? And actually I found it with my uncle. So my uncle, he is the owner of my home resort in Ubon Ratchathani. Looks like this. So a few houses, really, really beautiful. It's located at the in Pibung Mangsahan. There's the river, the Mun River, goes then into the Mekong River. We done actually our marriage, our wedding party we done here as well. So all the Germans lived here, and that resort was really nice. But 2020 there was a water flooding from the river. So you can see that actually here in the image there's like a line where the water was standing. So the houses are not really nice anymore. And but my uncle said, "Oh, it would be great to have like a weekend house at on the land of my parents." And so he got the idea to use that material for a new building, and he done it. So actually, he dismantled 2 buildings, and then he put all the material on the land of his parents, and then workers started construct the primary construction, like a timber frame construction, but as well the roof was recycled and the staircases that it looks now. So beautiful house where 75% of the material is reused, and therefore we saved, or he saved a lot of carbon emission, right? Because nothing needs to reproduce again, so it's all reused, and that's the circular economic idea, to reuse, reuse, and reuse, and be sustainable. Because of the water, the interior walls have been destroyed or unusable. That's why he used actually the facade cladding for an interior wall. It's quite beautiful. And then the staircases are reused. Quite funny, because from 2 different houses, 1 staircase. And then that's my son here running around. And the grandma had the idea to put the studs here higher to have more space. And that was a good idea. So actually the whole space under the house is usable. And actually here you can see like cutouts in the piles. That's actually because the cutout was necessary for that house before, but it's still possible to use that pile for that new house. So really nice project. So that's coming to the last one, which is plastic waste. And that's an image of the Mekong River, where you can see accumulated plastic waste. And that's a really serious issue in my point of view. So because the plastic kills us, right? It goes into the earth or the water, and then we get it in our body. And yeah, I mean, what I'm doing, you see here my bottle, right? I have it since 3 years. And in average, well, when I'm working, I refill it every day. In Thailand, maybe 8 times. In New Zealand, only 4 times. But in average, maybe let's say 1 time a day, I refill that bottle. 3 years, or 1 year is 300 days, 3 years 900 days. So 900 times I refilled that bottle, probably more often. That means 900 less plastic bottles, right? So imagine put 900 bottles into a sack here, a very high sack, right? Very, very big waste, and it's really important to think about where it goes. Where is that plastic going? So we just throw it in the river or in the waste bin, but it's going in the earth. So all the plastic waste in Thailand is going, in Bangkok, is going into landfill, as well in New Zealand as well. Just going to landfill, which means we bury plastic into the earth, but it's not, you cannot see it anymore, but it's still there, right? This is what I like to show you now what's happening here. So it's a scheme of food web contamination due to microplastic pollution. And what you can see here is that the bottles in the water, they becoming microplastic or even nanoplastic. And then they coming into the food chain and on our plate. As well, it goes to the air and into the ground, coming back to us, right? It's going to the groundwater, or the chickens eat it, coming back to us. As well, the salt or sugar, or even if we just use a water bottle, we will get some particles in our body, just very nanoparticles. We cannot see them, but we're getting plastic in our body by using them, right? So here it's a little bit less with that plastic bottle because it's a better quality, right? But if we use the very thin ones, and even it's warm food or warm hot drinks, then we're getting plastic into our body, and it kills. So you can see nanoparticles here, microparticles, plastic litter. As smaller it becomes, as more dangerous it is, and it goes everywhere. Birds, insects, rabbits. It kills them, but it kills us if we eat them, right? And here's some toxicities from nanoparticles and microparticles in the sample of a fish. So they found out that he's getting problems with his immunization system, neurotoxicity. So there's so many different things. They're just starting to research that, to finding out about that, right? So it's really, really a big issue. I'm really lucky because I had my dad. He was the guy who told me not to study architecture, and he was urban planner in Heidelberg. And then I was really lucky in Heidelberg because we had the first mayor in Germany from the Green Party, right, from the Eco Party. And they done very, very early. We starting in 1984, when I was 10, we started to do this, what you see here on the photo, to separate all the different waste types. And we had additionally, we had metal, and we had glass, which is actually now like for the community, like bigger waste bins, but it's collected and will be recycled. We have paper here, we have organic waste. And the trick here was, so you pay for the rest of rubbish, you pay a fee, a normal fee. And for the plastic package here, the yellow one, the fee was really, really high. So you had to pay a lot of money. That's why people stopped buying plastic packaging, right? So the people just said, do you need a plastic bag? No, I don't need it. It's money. I need to pay it when I put it into rubbish. So they stopped it, right? In a very early stage. And I really appreciate to see that here that you recycle here at Silpakorn as well. And you have a governmental regulation that's not allowed to hand out plastic bags, right? And all the time when I'm in 7-Eleven, they like to give me always a plastic bag, and I said, no, it's not allowed. So I don't take it. And please don't use any plastic anymore. If you use it only once, if you use it 3 years, it's okay, it's good. But if you throw it away, don't use it, please. Okay, it kills. What I'm doing in New Zealand is a project which is called Plastic Waste on Construction Sites, solution to improve on the cradle to grave approach. The government gave me a little bit of money, not much, 3.4 million. It's not so much for research, a small project actually. But what's going on in New Zealand is really scary. So PVC material is the major material used directly by construction industry in New Zealand. And we had 2005, 26,000 tons. And that's 65% of all PVC consumption in New Zealand. So that means there's a lot of plastic waste, but for the construction industry, where we are responsible as architects, it's more than the half, 65%, right? So that's why we need to act now. And you can see it actually here quite good on the photo. So everywhere is plastic, components, cut-offs, and as well packaging, right? What we've done so far is that we measuring the different plastic types, analyze them, and finding out where we have which type of plastic waste, and working towards a zero waste building site, as you can see here. I'm working with Professor Terry M. Berry, a fantastic person. So he founded the Environmental Solution Research Center in New Zealand, where I'm part of it right now as well. And she done a nice project. She done, because all the timber is wrapped in plastic. Because you need to protect the timber from rain. And that's one way is plastic. So it's covered in plastic, and then you put it into the bin. And Terry Ann actually done a project where we are using now reusable timber pack covers, as you can see here. So that's actually a really good material. That's from the truck, the cover from the truck. Reused, and you can reuse that many times, 100 times or even more. Protect the timber getting wet on the construction site. What you see here is LCA calculation. So that's actually from my thesis student, Amir. He submitted yesterday. He submitted his thesis. And you can see actually here the different steps, what happening within the building in the time, right? So the production here, product stage, construction stage. And here we have here the operational energy. So that's only the operational energy efficiency, only one small part out of many parts. And then we have here end of life and reuse, D and C. And there's data existing because people need to calculate with their computer programs the life cycle data of buildings. But we had a look to that, and we had a look regarding the packaging and the plastic waste, and there's almost no data existing. So nobody looked to that in detail already, right? I was really surprised, and that's what we are doing now. So we are measuring exactly what amount, what type of plastic we have right now on construction sites, and then we're feeding LCA tools that they can improve their results, actually, right? So that's another aim of the project. My most favorite aim is that we are communicating with companies, right? So there's, for example, what I showed you before, the polystyrene insulation material, right? Which is light and cheap and easy to produce, but it's not sustainable. So we're trying to find with the companies for alternative products, alternative materials. So can we use cork, which is like a material out of trees? Can we use a different material which is sustainable? So that's really exciting for me here, as I've worked before already. So really nice project. And now the last project before we finish is about concrete, because concrete is not sustainable. So if you compare the carbon emission and the energy consumption of the production of different materials, you can see PVC, timber, aluminium, steel becoming more worse and worse, and then cement, which is concrete. You can see it has the highest amount of energy consumption. And we need more and more concrete in the future, because the need for concrete is increasing. So we can see that here in the diagram from 1900 till now, dark blue is concrete. And if we take all the human-made materials, we can see that in 2020, we reached already the human-made, the outweighed the Earth's entire biomass. Yeah. And that's really alarming. So therefore, we looked again to the nature. It's always good to look to the nature. The nature is really clever, and our body is really, really clever as well. And if we look to a bone here, and we cut the bone here in the middle, we can see the structure is a huge cavity and then a very dense structure. If we cut it here, the very porous material, right? So it's again here and here. And the human body designed the bone regarding the requirements of structural design, actually, right? And Werner Sobeck again thought, why not adapting this to concrete, putting porosity into the concrete? And if we see that here's a wall, that's a floor plate, two walls. If we are standing here, the load goes here, 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 and then here. And that means here on these edges, it must be more dense and more strong, right? So we developed actually a program where we can calculate that, and then we can reduce the weight by making the concrete in different areas more porous. So we doing kind of graduation within the concrete structure. Easy to produce. So we just have two mixers. We have a very dense mix, and we have another mix which is like sparkling water with bubbles. Okay, and then to produce that guy here, we put more dense material, then we mix it with more sparkling, and here it's very porous, so using more of the mixture too. And we just need a robot arm which is moving. It's not so complicated, actually. And then we found out that we can reduce the weight to up to 60% and less material and energy use of 60%. So that's a lot, 60%. more than the half. And the porosity has insulation properties. So that means we don't need additional insulation material. We don't need all these layers, which makes everything so complicated. We just can use one wall. And we can recycle or reuse this single wall, the single layer, really easily. So what we are doing right now is developing that product. So we like to implement it as well in New Zealand, where we have to look to the earthquake. And we like to, if the product attacks to the market, we need to solve the building codes. Yeah, we would like to have mass production for more sustainable concrete in this project. Okay, that's all from my side. Future Cities Research Hub is what we have at School of Architecture and Planning in Auckland. So if you go here, you will find my contact as well. A very long lecture, but I can see in your faces that you're still very interested and awake. Yeah, so please feel free now to give feedback, to ask questions. Would be great just to communicate a little bit more. Just give me a quick break that I can drink some water.
And for participants joining online, if you have any questions, please write it to us in the chat box sector, and I'll read it out to Dr. Ferdinand here. We would like to thank you for the amazing lecture. It was, I'd like to say, it was mixed with amazing examples, a little bit of methodology, some even some concepts, and all the approaches that you have shown us. So I think this was very enlightening for us, and thank you very much again for the session. So now we open to the question and answer sessions. So if there's anyone who has questions here, I'd like to pass on the microphone.
Yeah, that's great.
So if no one has questions, I think I'd like to take this opportunity first to ask you a question. I come from Bhutan, and in a lot of our traditional buildings, we have the use of rammed earth. So I'd like to ask from your experience if you have come across rammed earth, and what are your views on rammed earth, because we're now starting to have the adaptive kind of reuse of rammed earth and to bring it back into the construction industry, which makes it very easy and sustainable for Bhutan as we have these materials. So what are your views and your experiences with rammed earth?
My view to rammed earth are very positive. I think it's a very should be a very successful building system. And I mean, actually, it's a nature material, so we don't need much energy to produce earth because we have it already, right? And probably the more important aspect is because it's probably a natural material is that it controls our thermal comfort within our spaces. So if it's too humid, the earth takes the humidity, it sucks it. If it's too dry, then it releases humidity. So the rammed earth material is controlling and adapting the air humidity in our spaces. And I visited a few projects of rammed earth in New Zealand, in Germany, and it's always very comfortable. So in the hot summer, it's really cool, and in the winter, it's warm. So it's about the storage capacity as well. So it's a solid material which can take temperature from outside and can release it inside. There are some issues, some problems with that as well, because when it's losing humidity, then there can appear cracks, right? But it's actually not a big problem, because you just close the cracks with the same material again, and it's not really my experience that I have is that I never saw like a serious issue with that. There's a very famous expert in Austria, which his name is Manfred Rauch. Rauch is the German name for smoke, and he built already many earth-rammed houses, and it's like surprisingly here, because when you think on earth-rammed houses, it looks probably a little bit dirty or inaccurate. But in that projects from the architect Rauch in Austria, it's just amazing. It's rectangular, it's clean, it just looks like concrete, right? And no, I think it's a very good opportunity for the human being to build houses, and we should focus more into that material. Definitely, yeah. So thank you very much for that fantastic question. Yeah, yeah.
Sally, my question would be, I don't know if it's relevant to this, but it just came in my, the question is always in my mind regarding the thermal comfort. From the textbook, it's always said that the sweet spot, the sweet temperature that we should set would be 25. And from your study in terms of the subtropical, what would be the best, or what would be the range of the temperature that we should set in order to at least reduce the energy consumption? And why would that be? I mean, in terms of the subtropical environment, what would you suggest? And in terms of the range of the temperature? Okay.
Thank you very much. That's a very, very good question. And it's really difficult to answer. I mean, firstly, you asked about subtropical region, and that's really good to precise it, because actually, for example, I grew up in Germany, and I have a totally different temperature perception. So when I come to Singapore and take the taxi from the airport to the city, I get sick because it's so cold in the taxi, right? And it's as well here. So I'm fighting a little bit with my wife, because I don't like to have any aircon, and my wife likes to have a little bit of aircon. And I'm getting quite fast cold from aircon, but it's because I'm German, so I'm not used to it, right? So we must be really, really careful about that. And then it's always subjective, because we have always different personalities or status. So they have small people and big people, and they all need a different thermal comfort, right? They all need a different temperature. But the question is good because as architects, we have to fulfill a specific temperature, right? So when we plan this place here, School of Architecture Library, we have to say, okay, the students need to study here and the staff, and we need to fulfill at least, for example, 25 degree. And then it becomes really a challenge and difficult to fulfill that without aircon. So it's nearly not possible, right? So that means to find a solution for our problems. And as I explained at the beginning of my speech, that the climate change is here already in Europe. It's not here in Thailand yet so strong, but at least when it comes here as well, we need to start to make compromises. And I would say that would be then the solution. Say, okay, we cannot reach it to have 25%. So we must have a compromise and saying it's maybe higher, right? And it's difficult to find this compromise because we have the building regulation. We like to have the students comfortable. There are so many reasons, but the message which I like to bring here today is that in Europe, people starting panicking because it's coming, it's here. So people dying, animals dying, it's really bad. It's and there's like this feeling, oh, how can we stop that? So we can send the fire brigade to stop the fire, but we cannot solve the problem that there's no water in the rivers, right? And the projects which I showed, like reusing old materials, it's really hard to do so for us architects, right? Because if I design this here, I like to have a really clean and new material. I don't like to have an old one. I don't like it. I like a new one. But there will come the point where we just don't have a choice, where we have to say, hey, we reduce the usage of air conditioning because we have to save energy, and we need to save the energy by producing new materials. And I hope that it will work. Yeah, but thanks a lot. Good question. Yeah.
But my question is, we still cannot just use the natural resources like wood, because instead of the concrete or other alternative materials, right? Because if we only use wood, that means we have to we have to demolish or cut all the woods, and then it will again come back to us in one way or another. So what's the optimal, I would think? What would the suggestion? What's the optimal point that, well, what should be the natural materials like woods, and in what parts that we should use some other things, because we cannot use all the woods, because right now climate change is a result of that we cutting our deforestation. That's the reason too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, very good question. So that's correct. So if we use only timber and wood for our architecture, that's not the solution, right? Because we don't have enough trees. So if we cut all the trees, then we don't have trees anymore, but we need, of course, the trees, because the trees producing oxygen, right? And another factor which is underestimated is that we mainly use probably especially in the Western countries, we use like engineered timber products, which is actually cross-laminated timber or glulam, where we need to put a lot of effort and energy to produce them. Probably poisoning as well, right? So in my point of view, the timber solution is overestimated, right? And I guess we probably need to find for each function in each case, we need the right solution. So we cannot say we quit concrete now, because there are probably some buildings where we just need concrete, because we cannot build it in another way, or maybe steel is not the better solution for that. We just finished a study at University of Auckland about comparing timber and steel construction. And from the start, it was totally clear that timber is much more sustainable, but the result now is it is not, because steel needs more energy when you produce it, of course, but you can more easily recycle steel. Yeah. And in New Zealand, especially, you cannot recycle timber because it's treated. So New Zealand, really nice for me because I'm working in those areas of subtropical climate, but not nice for the people who are living there. It's very humid, and people building their houses like here in Thailand, like a timber frame structure, but it's as well cold in the winter. And now they put all the insulation on top of it, and then the timber cannot breathe anymore. And when it's getting wet, it's getting rot. And so in between 1980 and 1990, there was a huge crisis in New Zealand where 50% of all the houses have been scrapped. So they have had to demolish them. And then they saw that, and then they started to treat the timber, to protect the timber for rotting against humidity. And they put boron, so high toxicity poison into the timber to avoid that they rot. And now everything is full of poison. It's really a problem. I mean, probably this is an aspect in our study which we done in New Zealand, which is important to consider here. No, but I think in general, I think it's important to look for alternative things. So I've just showed you our project Red in Concrete, for example, or probably there are other possibilities. Rammed earth, I think it's a really good opportunity. In fact, it is like this, that as architects, we cannot continue just we done in the past. I think we need to consider the whole life cycle much more, and actually we have to respect the nature. We have to act like this in the future. Yeah.
Can I ask some questions? Because we also got a question from the chat box as well. Quick question. Actually, I got two questions, but the first question is about, like, it is interesting that you come from the. It's on now. Because it's interesting that you come from the cold climate country and you move to another country and you study something about tropical or subtropical architecture. So, but you already answered something about thermal comfort. So I'm gonna pass this question and going to another question, right? About your book, like the recycling, reducing air conditioning usage in the residential building in subtropical country. Yeah. Are there any possibility to do it, or what are the limitations to achieve it? How can we do it, or Is that possibility to do it actually? Or is it just for the rich people only? You know, like for example, the case study. Okay.
Yeah,
That's my question.
very good
Thank you.
question. As I mentioned in the speech, the project which I found, the MAD and Windshell, are for very, very rich people, and that's a pity, right? And it's working there. So I saw that. So actually, the people, even they're very rich, that turn off the AC because they realize that the airflow is really nice. It's not so cold, and in these ultra high rise buildings, the air quality is quite good. It's fresh air, it's clean, more or less clean air. So most of the bad air is quite close to the surface from the cars and the dust. So it's working pretty well. And yeah, it would be great to adapt this to middle class and low income classes as well. I think this is a really important issue because actually we are talking like about these icons, right? So we have now 2 famous icons, but it must be like something which we can adapt to everywhere. And we tried this actually in Hong Kong, right? So, and Hong Kong Housing Authority, they showed me like a site-specific project, which was an icon again, right? So it was only one high-riser, and it worked pretty well, the aircon as well, without aircon, the natural ventilation, and all the other houses not. And then we made a project where we modified existing houses and we retrofit them having the aircon, because actually the main problem is that in these typologies in Hong Kong, you have on each side you have the apartments, but in the middle you have a middle corridor, and he's dividing the different units, and then you cannot do cross ventilation. But for ventilation, you always need an inlet and an outlet, always, like a river. And yeah, and so we discussed with Ada Fung, who was the director of the Hong Kong House, and Stephen Yim, he's the chief architect, and he mentioned something about SARS. So this was like the flu virus, which was before COVID, and that's an issue, right? So the possibility is that we are saying we have like doors, the apartment doors are like grids, and the air can go through, but it goes through the apartment of your neighbor, so you get the air used from your neighbor, and that's a problem. Not only because of COVID, as well because maybe I like to cook something but I eat already. So a solution is actually to create like some gaps in between that. And that's what we designed. And that's quite interesting. So you're independent from that air, and you get the fresh air from outside directly. That's possible. Yeah. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you for your answer, because it's another issue that we're concerning now, like about the health problem and the viruses. Yeah, that's we need to think about as well. Thank you.
So the next question is on the online chat box. It's from Montanan. So thank you so much for the lecture. The concept of using circular economy is quite interesting and is still quite new, even in Europe. So her question is, do you think there will be an incentive from the government point of view to change the building regulations regarding using more reused material in New Zealand? I'm in Sweden right now, and the only thing that stop people from using old materials is the fact that the thermal property does not live up to the current building regulations anymore? And there's another question as well.
Can you repeat the
first one?
The last sentence only from the first question.
Well, I think it's so. I'm in Sweden right now,
Yeah.
and the only thing that stopped people from using old materials is the fact that their thermal property does not live up to the current building regulations anymore. So, would you like me to repeat the question again? The first
No,
one?
it's okay. I got it. Yeah. So thank you very much. It's a good question. So the question is, if we need regulations, right?
Will there be incentive from the government point of view to change their building regulations?
Yeah. That's a very hot topic. I mean, actually, the thing is, so you saw the first project which I showed you about with the Velcro material, that you can separate the different layers, right? Which we brought to the market. And I have the grants on that. And if it's becoming a high-fly, which means a lot of selling, I get rich of that because I'm getting, I don't know, 3 cents per square meter or something. But the problem is right now, nobody is buying that because it costs more, right? So it's always about money. So the architects, the landlords saying, okay, you can choose between a very sustainable one, which is the triple price, or you get the normal glue one. They always take the glue one because it's always about the money issue. But actually in the European Union, they plan to make a regulation that you are responsible for all materials you plan and build in your houses. And when this regulation is coming seriously, then the people will all use my system, right? And as well, I explained, coming back to the Sweden question, I explained in both cases, like in Thailand and in Basel, Switzerland, that people not doing this because they're thinking about sustainability. So I'm always saying you need to force the people a little bit to do the right thing. So only if the people have no other solution, they probably will drive bike. I will take the taxi now, but I drive bike if there's nothing else possible, which is my case not really true because I drive bike every day. But just as an example, so a very good question, and I think building regulations are very important here. And it's really then the discussion about when you need to follow the regulations from the government, because, for example, in Thailand, you have now the regulation that plastic bags are not allowed in shops, but still you see it everywhere, right? So probably you need to answer that question for Thailand differently than for the European Union, I would say. Yeah.
Again, another question. The passive house is the good idea of its time. However, we see with the recent heat wave in Europe, it does not do well in higher temperature, which is probably our future considering climate changes. Is there any idea or concept right now that you think would fit the future climate?
Yeah, that's right. That's totally correct. So the passive house is actually designed exactly for the climate in moderate climate regions, which is now, and now I need to say was now in Europe. So every time when I'm in Frankfurt, Germany, I go to that passive house and I talk to the inhabitants. And I can see actually the climate change there, because it started like in 1 year where there was one day when it was too hot, right? And then that's was a big issue for me because I planted, and so I like that the inhabitants are happy. And then now these days are now increasing. So they every year I go there and I ask them, this year it was 3, then 5, and now they have like 20 days where it's too hot there. And that's really coming, the climate change. I would not suggest to build passive houses at all. I think passive houses is not the right choice. So, I mean, and that's for that climate region. I don't know about Thailand. So if you adapt a passive house into Bangkok, you would say you will build a house which has not too much glass, because with the glass you lose the coolness from inside to outside, and you get the hot solar radiation inside. And you will put insulation on your house that you keep the coolness in the house. That would be a passive house here. And interesting would be to drill into the earth and to see what's going on there, because there's water, and I don't know what's the water temperature, but probably you can use the water temperature to cool your house, maybe. Would be interesting. So that would be the issue in Thailand, and in moderate climates in Europe, I would say what I showed before, probably when I would planning now a house, it would be a combination of an active house and a simply building. Probably, I'm really agreed to keep the things simple. Is always good. A passive house is a highly technical thing, because you have like a mechanical ventilation, you have the earthing, so there's quite a lot of technique, and technique can be good, but technique can break as well, right? So Werner Sobeck, who's the inventor of the active house, he is saying that the active house has a very high value, high tech technique inside, but this is like a Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz is coming from Stuttgart, and Werner Sobeck is coming from Stuttgart as well. So, and I understand that. So if you design something really good in a high quality, it costs more, but it will last longer as well. Which makes, I think that's why I'm saying probably it must be a combination of active house and simply building. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So since we don't have any questions in the room, do we have any more questions? So if not, then I think this brings us to the end of the session. I would like to again thank you very much. And before we finish this, I would like to invite our Dean to present a small token of gratitude from the Silpakorn family. It was.
That's for me. Thank you.
We will have a lot of collaboration. Good speech or lecture. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much. That's a surprise.
Good, thank you.
ขอบคุณครับครับผม Oh, wow. Nice books here. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Yeah, okay. I'd like to say thank you as well. So thank you for being here today, to the audience in person, and as well the audience on Zoom. I'm actually quite curious how many people and from where. Oh, nice. Okay, that sounds good. So thanks a lot, and I'm happy that we recorded that as well. So I got a few questions from my students from New Zealand, and it's now 3 in the night. So it's a bit difficult for them to watch this, and I'm happy to put the lecture video recording to them. No, it's great. And in general, it was just awesome to be in Thailand, here in Bangkok at Silpakorn now. Monday, I fly back to Germany. And now I hope that we can continue our cooperation, and maybe we can even increase that. And maybe we can create some new things. And I think the most important thing is to learn from each other. I learn always a lot here. And that's good if we can exchange our thoughts and can learn from each other. Cool. Thank you very much.